Ladies and gentlemen, in the horizon we can see the next generation of graphics cards. They're slowly sailing towards us. And the rumour mill is of course already in full swing. This time around we don't just need to contend with the specifications, the performance as well as the features of these next generation parts, but also other questions are thrown into the mix. With AMD's alleged cancellation of high-end RDNA 4 parts, and with RDNA 5 coming roughly 6 quarters later, so that basically means end of 2025 for high-end RDNA 5 parts, we are left with a lot of questions what Nvidia and AMD's strategy will be going forward. And that's to say nothing about Intel, and we know of course Intel's Battle Mage is going to be launching soonish. Well, in this video then, I want to talk to you guys about some of the performance information that I've been hearing about RDNA 4, specifically 44 as well as 48, some of the specifications, and also give you a couple of updates for RTX 50 as well as Blackwell. Well, let's just jump into it, shall we? So I think the best thing to do would be to provide you guys a quick catch-up with the older information in case you missed it. Now this has been fairly well established at this stage, so I will just go over this briefly. You can see on screen a slide which will help get you onto the same page. AMD's original plans included a plethora of high-end RDNA 4 products as well, including N40 and 41. These basically took the concepts seen in N31 and 32 chiplet designs, but dialed them up to 11. I'd linked a few potential configurations in the past, but in brief, we would see multiple compute dies plonked together on a base tile, which would house things like the display engine. Now again, there is a lot more to it, but I'm just trying to get you onto the same page. You can check out older videos if you want more info. Now, I've also heard that there was also a simplified design considered when the bring up of this multiple chiplet design was kind of in a lot of doubt. Basically, it would be more like N31 with a single compute die. The only difference, of course, is that the die would be larger, housing more workgroup processors and so on, and of course be based on RDNA 4's IP. Now, I do have a lot of mixed information whether this was truly considered or not, but it doesn't really matter because those designs are dead. Now, what is going to happen is low-end products will be the only ones that launch, and will do so probably in Q3 2024-ish. RDNA 5 though launches in late 2025, and these products will be a return to high-end performance products, essentially offering flagship performance from AMD again, and the top SKUs will be chiplet and the lower end of course will be monolithic. So let's talk about the configurations and also some performance information. This is going to be N44 and 48. Now I have heard some mixed information regarding the names of these chips, but 44 and 48 seem to be correct right now. Also remember that the number is not a reference to the performance tier, but instead a reference to the order that it was being essentially created / designed at AMD. Now I have also been told two potential configurations for both 44 and 48. The main difference, as you'll see in a second, is the memory configuration. Now, I'm not certain whether one is a mobile configuration, or more likely, the final design just has not been, well, finalized yet. So you can see the configuration yourself. One configuration for N48, 32 work group processors, 48 megabytes of infinity cache, 192-bit GDDR7, and PCIe Gen 5 16. The other configuration is the same in terms of the workgroup processor count, but 32 megabytes of infinity cache, and you'll also spot, of course, that the bus width is narrower. Much the same could be said for N44, 20 workgroup processors, 32 megabytes of IC, 128-bit, and you can see the main difference here is that the PCIe Gen configuration is the same, but we only have ×8 rather than a 16 slot. And of course the second configuration is identical in the number of workgroup processors, but well, I don't need to tell you guys, the infinity cache has been knocked down to just 24 megabytes and 96-bit GDDR7. Note that we are seeing AMD supposedly moving on to GDDR7. Now, this does make exact comparisons quite difficult because for one, well, of course, there's probably going to be architectural improvements just in terms of how data is handled on the GPU, but also GDDR7 has access to much faster memory speeds and also higher capacity memory as well, as you can see on screen. This means that, of course, a 96-bit bus could offer well, just more capacity. For example, 9 gigabytes of RAM instead of 6 for what we saw with GDDR6's 2 gigabyte traditional modules. 128-bit could go up to 12, and 18 gigabyte for 192 rather than 12 gigabytes of a GDDR6 2 gigabyte module configuration. Unfortunately, I couldn't get too many specifics on the general architecture yet for RDNA 4. There's a couple of older slides you can see, but from what I'm told, RT performance still seems behind the equivalent Nvidia SKU. Now, the way this was told to me, it seemed to be referencing RTX 40, not 50. But I've basically been told a few changes for RDNA 4's improvement include better data prefetching, WMMA v2, doubling the performance per CU for the right kind of instructions and data, and of course, as you would expect, further improvements to the Infinity cache. There was also a patent we saw for a BVH accelerator from AMD, which is very much more like how Nvidia handles things, but I can't get confirmation from sources whether this is RDNA 4 or RDNA 5 or simply isn't for any product at all, and it's just a patent that never will emerge for anything. In general, though, the performance targets I was told for the 32 workgroup processor variant is going to be between the 7800 XT and the 7900 XT, and the lower end variant will basically outperform N33, but will lose to any of the N32 based SKUs. Now, like I've said in previous videos, this will basically mean that the highest performance offerings from AMD as of the time of RDNA 4's launch will still be any of the 7900 series SKUs. Now, of course, we've spoken a lot as well about RDNA 3.5's APUs, which will be Strix Point, and its halo known as Sarlacc. I won't go over all of those details again because, well, I've spoken about them so many times at this stage, but there's also a sequel, a successor actually, that's a better word, isn't it? This is known as Kraken Point. This is, again, an APU, as you probably guessed, given the fact it's a successor to Strix Point, but it's Zen 5 Plus and RDNA 4.5 from what I'm told. I don't want to say too much about the APU for this video, though, because I want to check a few things regarding the configuration before I put too much about this in the open. Now, let's move from AMD and talk about the big green elephant in the room, Nvidia. As you guys know, RTX 50 rumours have been swirling a lot recently, and from my understanding, the general release schedule seems to go RDNA 4, again as I said earlier, Q3 2024, RTX 50 by Q1, Q2 2025, and then RDNA 5, which again seems to be late 2025. I recently covered a number of supposed leaks from Chiphell regarding the configuration and specifications, and speaking to a number of sources, I've honestly been told a lot of mixed information. One source essentially told me flat out that this is not correct. For example, they told me that L2 cache is almost certainly not going to increase too much due to scaling. Another source told me that this is potentially a configuration, but if it is, it's amongst many. And this configuration is not even close to being finalized yet. Basically, there is no like final RTX 50 designs that have been, taped out or anything like that. Basically, Nvidia have not finalized anything. They're testing stuff internally, and the first thing that seems, of course, to be launched, and there's some rumors about this that are swirling up from other websites, is that Blackwell will see, first of all, a release in the data center. And that will be chiplet based, which I had also leaked way back in the day, that Blackwell would be chiplet based for the data center. And then later on, possibly later this year, or more likely, at least in my personal opinion, some point in 2024, we will have a better understanding as to the specs. Now, this is not to say that there are not potential specifications that are floating around. It's not like Nvidia have absolutely no clue at all. It's just that they haven't gone in a specific direction at the moment. Basically, there's a lot of internal testing, speculation, and potential configurations, but nothing has been set in stone. Now, if I had to guess, I would say, though, that leaks concerning features, such as Kybertype 7 Kimi recently confirmed some of my older information that the SM structure was significantly different compared to the older GPUs, and that also there wasn't a big increase in the number of unit on the GPUs. I think this is more likely to be accurate, but again, stuff regarding the specifications is probably up in the air. Now, if you missed my previous video discussing Battlemage, there are a lot of questions, honestly, concerning the performance. As I mentioned in a couple of videos, basically the early performance targets I was hearing was roughly RTX 4080 in terms of raster, but it seems that Intel may miss those targets. Now, it's still early to know this, but it's going to be very interesting in terms of timing exactly what we end up with. RDNA 4 doesn't necessarily equal a bad product. Even if, let's say, the rumors I'm hearing about the specifications and performance are correct, if it's priced correctly, then it's absolutely fine. And honestly, you know, one of the big problems, of course, we've had for a couple of generations of GPUs is just affordability. It's also going to be extremely interesting going forward as well, because obviously with Intel as well as AMD really doubling down on things like APUs, it's going to lead to a lot of questions. And that's to say nothing about the console stuff as well. Obviously, Microsoft kind of accidentally revealed some of its potential plans for a next generation Xbox, although I still think there's a very good chance that those specs are not 100% accurate, and that's putting it mildly. But of course, the PlayStation 5 Pro is also on the horizon as well. Basically, there's a lot of questions going forward, and I'm really excited to see what happens. That's it, guys. I'm going to let you all go. Take care of yourselves. Have an amazing day. Stay safe. Bye for now.